All right, today's virtue is foresight. And that's easy enough. For means before, sight. Look at it, look around, see it. So foresight means to think about all the things that we're going to do, all of the choices that we make. It's kind of like last week's, to be honest with you. Oh no, last week was docility, right? There was one a couple ago. Circumspection, thank you, Mrs. Higgins. Where we look around at the choices we make and imagine what the consequences could be. And again, a reminder that consequences can be negative. It's often the first way we think of them. But they also can be positive. So for us this week, the focus is foresight. Look at the things that you're doing. Look at the choices that you're making. And imagine what could come about because of that. What could the fallout be? Now that's easier said than done. We live in real time, right? When I need to make a decision in the moment with emotion behind it, how easy is that to stop and think and be rational about all of the choices and all of the fallout that could come about from each one? Do we have time for that in that moment? No, we don't really. We live in real time, right? So I talk so often to you about training ourselves. And training is always the work that comes about beforehand, right? You don't train for a race after you've run it. You train before you do it. And so with virtue, we're always trying to train ourselves. So one of the things we need to train ourselves to do is to take time to think. That will help our foresight in the moment, in the future, because if I've prepared for these things, it will come back to me when I'm in real time in a situation where I need to make a decision on the spot. I always talk to classes about fire safety, right? Have a place where your family knows that you will meet if there would ever happen to be a fire in your home. That's planning ahead of time, because in that moment, you're not going to be able to figure that out. You aren't going to have time. You need to just have trained yourself. This is what I need to do. And then your brain kind of takes over and it does it automatically. I read this great quote just a couple of weeks ago. I put it into my own phone so I would never forget it. Because I talk about learning from our mistakes often. I talk to myself about learning from my mistakes often. But this was an interesting, yet so simple thing for me to add to that. You don't learn from experience. What? Like, that's the exact opposite of what I was thinking. But there's a second part that makes it all make sense. You don't learn from experience. You learn from reflecting on your experience. That's how we grow wiser. If you don't study for a test and you do poorly and you never put those two pieces together, are you going to change? No, you'll keep not studying and keep not doing well or as well as you could, and you'll never make the change. But if you don't study and you do poorly on a test and you take some time to think about, why might I not have done so great on this test? And then you think, well, I didn't study very much. Now you've put the pieces together. So the experience itself, doesn't that make total sense? Like, it's so simple. The experience itself is not what makes you wiser. It's the reflecting on it. And then I thought, think about how we're so busy. We are so occupied with things. Do we take time to reflect? I think that's becoming something we do less and less all the time. I'm thinking of myself yesterday. I am addicted to the dumbest game on my iPad. And I keep telling myself, I'm not going to play it. This is ridiculous. This is a waste of time. And then I find myself, I'm just going to play for 1 minute. You know how that goes, right? 1 minute turns into 30. And what have I accomplished? Nothing. Truly nothing. I'm completing the same thing I've done many times before. I'm getting the same rewards I've done many times before. Is any of that changing my life? Absolutely not. Is any of this making the world a better place? Absolutely not. Does this mean anything? No. And yet I keep going back to it. A couple of interesting other quotes I've come across. Something is addictive entirely because it is not satisfying. Think about that. Something is addictive simply because it is not satisfying. That pretty much sums up me in that stupid game that I play. But what I need to do is to reflect, and then to make a plan, and then to follow through. And it's hard work. That's the hard part. God gave us free will. What a blessing, what a gift. But we know with those blessings and gifts, we have to put in the work sometimes. And so we are training ourselves to look ahead to what are the decisions that are going to be coming our way. What are some of the problems that we might be experiencing in life? We're pretty good at guessing what the realistic ones are, right? Could you imagine what some of the problems are that you might have with a sibling? Could you imagine something that your parents might say that might just make you want to roll your eyes or stomp or whatever it is that I like to include myself with you, our teenage selves might be tempted to do? I think we're pretty good at figuring those things out. Could we take a minute and reflect on that and come up with a plan? I can do this instead. I've been talking to 6th grade. When you inhale, Jesus, and you exhale, mercy. Jesus, mercy. Man, that calms me down. Could that be your go-to? You need to come up with something that's your go-to because you are practicing foresight. Because in that moment, when I'm going to be dealing with a situation that I know I'm going to be tempted to deal with in a way that's not virtuous, I need a plan. And I need to have practiced it and thought about it. And then I will be successful with foresight. Life is about planning for those things. Virtue is practicing those things, to develop it, to train ourselves. We live in real time in a world that is fighting for our attention, in a world that, it seems, by the way, is coming up with more and more ways to occupy our minds so we don't reflect on things. Think about those devices that we hold. How much of our reflecting time have those robbed from us? How much of our reflecting time have we allowed those things to rob from us? I am as guilty, if not more so, than anybody. And that is why I love the Virtue Talks, because it is a reminder to myself and hopefully to you that we need to take time and reflect and be with God in those quiet moments so that we can become better people. It doesn't just happen. We have to do the work. So have a great week and do the work.